It is the week leading up to Mother's Day. It's Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's also the eve before my 7th breast cancer related surgery in 9 months. And I can't help but think about how I got here, especially when this could have been prevented. What I'm talking about is knowing our mom genes. Do you know your mom genes? Do you know your genetics when it comes to cancer? Do you know your genetics when it comes to mental health? I mean, I first started thinking about this when it comes to mental health because as a maternal mental health expert, I have long asked that question. Have you ever talked to your mother or your grandmother about their predisposition for depression, anxiety, postpartum, or other kinds of issues, because we tend to inherit those from our family. And the same goes for breast cancer, and specifically the BRCA gene, BRCA. BRCA1, BRCA2, I tested positive for the BRCA1 gene 2 weeks after I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So for me, it was too late to know my genetics and therefore take actions to prevent ever having to be labeled or having to deal with that breast cancer thing. We had a kind of crazy history when it comes to our genetics. My mother has had breast cancer 3 times, and she had done her genetic testing 11 years ago and then 7 years ago. But we were told that we had what was called a VUS, a variant of unspecified significance, or basically they couldn't tell us for sure if what was going on with my mother was part of the BRCA gene mutations or not. And because of that, whenever I went in, and I was a diligent daughter, knowing my mom genes, knowing my mom had breast cancer and that I was at super high risk, I went in for mammograms starting at 27 because my mom was 37 when she was diagnosed. And we talked about genetic testing. And I remember on my motherhood podcast once interviewing a woman who had done the testing and found out she was positive and done the surgeries preventatively to be a previvor, so she never did get cancer. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I would do that if I found out. And we never got the chance to know because that VUS meant that therefore my doctors and all of the people that I worked with and my sisters and family worked with did not test us because there wasn't a positive BRCA gene mutation in a close relative in my mother. So that meant that I didn't find out until after it was too late for me. I already was diagnosed with breast cancer. But the miracle is that the week that my testing was done by Myriad Genetics, and the reason why I say Myriad is because my mother had done her testing with Myriad years and years ago, and then again with another company. And there's so many other companies, and so many people think that when we get our genetic testing done, that you need to find the cheapest company, but that's not the best case scenario. Myriad is a company that actually makes a promise that they will follow up with us, and they will follow up on these things like these VUSs. And that's what happened with us. Luckily, the week that I submitted my test results, they reclassified that VUS as a BRCA1 gene mutation. That means that I'm at super high risk for breast cancer, for ovarian cancer, for pancreatic cancer, and even an slightly elevated risk for melanoma. And it means that there's a 50% chance that I'm going to pass that on to my children. So my mother, therefore, has the BRCA1 gene mutation. I do too. The other miracle that happened, though, is that my siblings were all tested. And one of my sisters in particular was going to do the pre-vivor kinds of surgeries, get a double mastectomy after she'd had her children and get a hysterectomy after she'd had her children so she never developed cancer. And once they were tested, they were all negative. So my sister had been planning in a few years to do these surgeries that she didn't even need. This is why it's so important for us to get our genes tested and to know our genetic history. Now that I know that I am BRCA1 positive, I've been able to have discussions with my children and talk to them about what it means and what they can do to stay safe, to get checkups earlier. Having that knowledge is so powerful. When we have knowledge, knowing our genes, it's power. And whether that means that we can prevent it by taking action with surgery, or whether it means in the case of young men or men that develop that know that they have the BRCA1 gene mutation or BRCA2, they can be getting tested and getting scanned for prostate cancer and breast cancer. And we can all be taking better care of ourselves, knowing that we're at a super high risk of this, and prevent the cancer that I had to go through. I'm so grateful that I can prevent that in my kids. And in fact, this past week, my 4 sons, who are all 19 and to 23 years old, went in and they had their BRCA gene testing done through Myriad Genetics as well, because we trust them. And Myriad actually did follow up with my mom, even though they didn't realize that it was the same person as me. They followed up with my mother by calling her doctor, and the doctor called her and told her that she was BRCA1 positive, just like I had been told. And the other company that she did it with, they didn't get in touch with her. They sent her an email 8 months later. And she would have never opened that email if she didn't know all of this because of me. So bottom line is, what are your mom genes? What do you inherit from your family? And it's important for mental health. It's super important for our cancer related health and preventing cancer. If I could have known this ahead of time, I could have chosen to have surgeries. And yes, I might have had 3 surgeries total, but I would have never had to go through chemo. I would never have to be, luckily saved my hair through cold capping, but you see all my little hair growing back in and all my eyebrows and my fatigue and exhaustion, and starting up with another surgery again soon. Go and get your genes tested if you have a history in your family, and use Myriad Genetics because they are the company that I trust, the only company that I trust. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer any of them for you. You guys, this is really important. Know your mom genes.